Welcome in, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're tackling a topic that just seems to be everywhere: the future of work. And honestly, it can feel like every other day there's a new article about AI coming for our jobs or needing to learn a whole new skill set. But we wanted to go deeper here, so we dug into some really insightful reports from two of the leading voices on all things work: Gartner and McKinsey and Company.
And it's way more than just hype. We're talking about massive shifts happening right now with technology, with people's values, and even with how we think about work itself.
Exactly. This isn't just like rearranging the furniture, this is a whole remodel. So let's start with a concept Gartner talks about: human-centric work. Which, okay, on the surface seems kind of obvious, right? But their research shows a lot of companies are still missing the mark on actually putting their people first.
Yeah, it's like for years it was all about squeezing as much productivity out of employees as possible, often to the detriment of their well-being. And now we're seeing the consequences of that. Burnout, stress, people quietly quitting their jobs.
And Gartner's research found a direct link between how empowered employees feel and how well a business performs. They say that when employees feel supported, when they have genuine flexibility, they're actually less tired and more likely to be top performers. So I guess the question is, how do you make that happen? And it's got to be more than just, oh yeah, work from home a couple days a week if you want.
Right. Gardner breaks down this whole human-centric work idea into three main parts: flexible work, intentional collaboration, and empathy-based management. We're not talking about ping pong tables and free snacks here. It's about fundamentally changing how we approach work.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Flexible work seems kind of straightforward. Give employees real choices about where, when, how they work best. But what makes that more than just a nice perk?
Well, it's about recognizing that everyone's different, right?
Mm.
Some people might do their best work in a busy coffee shop, others need the quiet of their home office. Gartner found that people who have flexibility at work are something like 1.5 to 1.7 times more likely to stay at their company and, get this, be high performers.
Wow, those are impressive numbers. So it's not just about keeping employees happy, it directly impacts a company's success. What about this intentional collaboration? Doesn't that seem a little odd when so many people are working remotely these days?
Intentional collaboration means recognizing that not all interactions are equal. We've all been there, right? Stuck in back-to-back video calls, feeling totally drained by the end of the day. It's about being more deliberate. Do we really need a meeting for this, or would a shared document or just a quick check-in later be more efficient?
Totally. Sometimes a quick email thread gets the job done way faster than the 30-minute video call where everyone's half listening anyway. But isn't there a risk of losing that sense of connection, that spontaneity, if everything is so planned out?
And that's where that third element comes in: empathy-based management. It's
Mm.
about really building trust and understanding, especially when you're not seeing your team in person every day.
So moving away from that whole command and control style of management that just feels so outdated now.
Exactly. Managers who get this, who lead with empathy, they're the ones who are good at creating an environment where people feel comfortable speaking up, even if they're struggling, even if it's about a sensitive topic. And, surprise, surprise, Gartner's research shows that this kind of leadership actually leads to better business outcomes overall.
So you've got to build that psychological safety, even from a distance. Okay, so that's kind of the foundation, this idea of human-centric work. But of course, the working world itself is changing like crazy. Gartner's identified 9 key trends that are shaping the future of work. And these aren't just like fun facts, these are forces that are already impacting industries, careers, everything. Ready to dive into those?
Let's do it. Let's see what's on the horizon.
All right, so the first trend Gartner highlights is this cost of work crisis. Sounds dramatic, I know, but it's basically this tension between what companies want and what employees want in this new world of work. Lots of companies are pushing for a return to the office, but employees are pushing back. Commuting costs, childcare, even just buying lunch every day, it all adds up.
It's a huge drain on time, money, and energy. And people who've gotten a taste of that flexibility of remote work, they don't want to give it up.
Right, there's a real tug of war happening. Gartner's saying that this could lead to even more employee resentment and burnout, maybe even higher turnover if companies aren't careful.
Okay, now for the elephant in the room. AI. It's on everyone's mind, and it's definitely one of the biggest forces shaping the future of work. But is it the job-stealing monster everyone's afraid of?
Gartner's actually pretty optimistic about this, at least for the near future. They think AI, especially this generative AI everyone's talking about, will actually create more jobs than it replaces in the coming years.
So instead of thinking about AI as replacing us, we should be thinking about how it can work with us, how it can open up new possibilities.
Exactly. Think of it this way. As AI takes over those tasks that are repetitive, data-heavy, it actually frees up humans to focus on the things we're good at, things AI can't replicate. Strategy, creativity, building relationships. This could lead to entirely new types of jobs, just like the internet did. That's a great point. Remember when social media manager wasn't even a thing? And now it's a whole industry. Speaking of new possibilities, let's talk about a trend I think a lot of people can get behind. The 4-day work week. Gartner predicts we're going to see a lot more of this, and honestly, who wouldn't want an extra day off?
Right. But it's not about just squeezing 5 days of work into 4. It's about working smarter, not harder. It's about redesigning how we work to maintain or even exceed productivity. And the companies that have made this work, they're seeing happier employees and even lower operating costs.
That sounds almost too good to be true, but I imagine there are some challenges too. Not every job can just be squeezed into 4 days.
Of course, of course. It needs a change in mindset, both from employers and employees. It's about focusing on results, not just how many hours you're sitting at your desk.
Okay, makes sense. Let's move on to a trend that might seem a little unexpected. Employee conflict resolution. Why is this suddenly so important?
Well, think about the world we live in now. It's more polarized than ever, right? And those social and political issues, they often spill over into the workplace. And when you add in the whole complexity of hybrid and remote work, well, it's a recipe for potential conflict.
So it's not just about smoothing over personality clashes or office drama anymore. It's about navigating those potentially really sensitive conversations about everything. Societal issues, political differences, even climate change anxieties, right?
Exactly. Managers need to be able to facilitate those difficult conversations, and they need to do it in a way that's respectful and productive, making sure everyone feels heard, even when there are strong disagreements.
Like emotional intelligence, but on a whole other level. Okay, back to AI for a minute. Specifically, Gartner highlights the potential problems with rushing into using generative AI without really thinking it through. What are the concerns there?
Well, generative AI is incredibly powerful, but like any powerful tool, it needs to be used responsibly. You need to experiment carefully, have clear goals for what you're trying to achieve, and communicate openly with employees, addressing any concerns they might have.
So being mindful of those ethical implications and potential biases, making sure it's being used fairly. Okay, onto a trend that's long overdue, the decline of what they call the paper ceiling. What's going on here?
We're finally moving past this idea that a traditional 4-year degree is the only way to measure someone's abilities. With online learning, boot camps, all these other ways to learn, skills are becoming the new currency in the job market.
Which is fantastic news for people who may not have had the opportunity to go the traditional route, but who have valuable skills and experience. It just opens up so many possibilities, both for job seekers and for companies looking for diverse talent.
Absolutely. This shift recognizes that learning never stops, right?
Yeah.
It's not something that ends when you graduate.
Right. The focus is shifting from where did you go to school to what can you actually do? Okay, here's a trend that's super relevant right now. Climate change protection. It's becoming a key factor in attracting and keeping top talent.
Absolutely. Employees, especially younger generations, they want to work for companies that are taking real action on climate change, not just talking about it.
So we're talking about things like actually reducing the company's carbon footprint, making sure their practices are sustainable, maybe even offering benefits that support employees who are making eco-conscious choices.
It's becoming non-negotiable for a lot of people. They want their work to have a positive impact on the world.
It's about those values aligning, right? Personal values and company values. Now let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI for short. What's Gartner seeing happening in this area?
They're predicting that DEI is going to become fully integrated into everything companies do. It's not just going to be a separate initiative. It'll be part of the company's DNA.
So it's about moving beyond just checking boxes and actually creating a culture where everyone feels valued and respected for who they are.
Exactly. Because ultimately, diversity of thought, of backgrounds, of experiences, it leads to better decision-making, better innovation, just better outcomes overall.
Right? Everyone benefits. Okay, last trend on Gartner's list. The collapse of traditional career paths. Tell me more about this.
That whole climb the corporate ladder idea, it's fading away. We're moving toward careers that are more fluid, less linear. People are changing careers later in life. They're picking up side hustles. They're looking for more autonomy, more purpose in their work.
It's exciting, but it's also kind of scary, right? It's a totally different way of thinking about your career. You're not looking for security in a job for life anymore. You've got to be ready to adapt and learn constantly.
It's a total paradigm shift.
And it means companies need to rethink how they approach their employees' development. They need to be offering opportunities for growth, for learning new skills, for moving around within the company.
Totally. Companies have to be proactive here, especially with technology changing so fast. They need to help their people upskill and reskill to keep up.
So it's about building a culture of constant learning and development, where people feel empowered to explore new paths and learn the things they need to succeed in this ever-changing world of work. Okay, so Gartner's given us this fantastic overview of the major trends, but now I want to bring in McKinsey and Company's perspective. They're taking a slightly different angle, focusing more on what all this means for the people actually managing and leading teams.
They're really getting into the nitty-gritty, offering practical advice on how to navigate these shifts and actually succeed in this new world of work.
And that's where we're going to pick up in part 2 of our deep dive. We'll explore McKinsey's insights on how the workplace itself is changing and what it takes to be an effective leader in this new reality. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the future of work.
In the last part, we talked about some of the big trends shaping the workplace, like human-centric work and AI and the need for new skills. But now I want to get into how the workplace itself is changing. Like, what does it even look like now? And how can leaders adapt? That's where McKinsey and Company's research comes in.
Yeah, it's not just about where we work anymore, right? It's about how. McKinsey's saying we need a whole new approach, a new set of rules for offices, for work-life balance, even for leadership.
It's like we need a whole new operating system for work. So where do we even begin?
Well, McKinsey says there are 3 really important things managers need to focus on in this world of hybrid work. And the first one is equipping teams for resilience.
Now, when I hear resilience, I think about bouncing back from setbacks, but it sounds like it's more than that in the context of work.
Right. It's not just about surviving tough times. It's about thriving in the middle of constant change, constant uncertainty. Imagine a work environment that can adapt to anything, like a sudden shift in the market, another pandemic, who knows. Even just the fact that technology is always changing, that's resilience in action.
So it's about being agile, adaptable, ready for whatever comes your way. But how do you actually build that kind of resilience into teams, especially when they're spread out all over the place?
It starts with having the right technology, the kind that lets people work together seamlessly, whether they're online at the same time or not. Think about things like really good project management tools, communication platforms that go beyond just email and chat, maybe even virtual whiteboards where you can brainstorm ideas together.
So giving teams the tools they need to connect and collaborate no matter where they are. But I imagine tools alone aren't enough. You still need that human element.
Absolutely. And that brings us to McKinsey's second imperative, investing in human-centric managers. It's not just about being a nice person. It's about having the skills to create a team where everyone feels connected, included, and safe to speak their minds, even when they're stressed or burned out.
So it's about actually putting those empathy-based management skills we talked about earlier into practice. But isn't that even harder when you're not interacting face-to-face all the time?
It definitely takes more conscious effort. Managers have to find ways to build that sense of community and belonging, even if their team is scattered across different locations and time zones. Maybe that means scheduling regular virtual check-ins, doing team-building activities online, or just making a point to publicly acknowledge people's accomplishments and milestones.
So being present and engaged, even virtually, making people feel seen and valued. Okay, so we've got resilient teams, supportive managers. What's the third piece of this puzzle?
The third thing McKinsey emphasizes is shifting to a way of evaluating performance that focuses on impact, not just inputs. In other words, it's time to stop measuring success based only on how many hours someone's sitting at their desk and start focusing on what they actually achieve.
Which makes total sense when flexibility and autonomy are so important to people. You can't expect someone to be chained to their computer from 9 to 5 and still be at their most creative and productive.
Right. You need a new approach, one that's all about clear goals, regular feedback, and looking at the big picture of what someone contributes. It's about recognizing that impact can happen in all sorts of ways, not just during traditional work hours.
So trusting people to manage their time and their workload and focusing on the results they deliver, not just how many hours they're logged in. Now, one of the big worries about hybrid and remote work is that it'll kill company culture. It's easy to imagine that feeling of shared purpose and camaraderie fading when people aren't physically together as much.
It's a valid concern, and it's something a lot of companies are struggling with. But Gartner's research actually suggests you can have a strong culture, even in a hybrid world.
Really? How do you do that? What's the secret?
Gartner says it's about creating what they call emotional proximity, which they argue can be just as powerful as physical proximity in building a sense of belonging and purpose.
Emotional proximity. That's a new one. What does that mean exactly?
Think of it as intentionally building connections, trust, and that feeling of belonging, even when people are physically apart. It's about creating a culture where people feel like they can be themselves, share their ideas, and support each other, no matter where they're located.
So, like creating a virtual water cooler, a place where people can connect on a more personal level, build relationships, and feel like they're part of something bigger, even if they're not in the same physical space.
Exactly. And Gartner points out that this isn't just about having fun, it's actually about creating the conditions for better collaboration and performance. They highlight three key areas to focus on: cultural connection, team cohesion, and what they call microcultures.
Okay, let's break those down. We've talked about cultural connection. It's that sense of belonging, shared values, a common purpose. But what about team cohesion? What makes teams work well together, especially in a hybrid or remote environment?
Gartner's research found that a few things really matter: working together effectively, communicating openly, and sharing responsibility. And when teams have that cohesion, it directly impacts whether people stay at the company and how well they perform.
It makes sense, right? When people feel connected to their team and their work, they're more likely to stick around and give it their best. But what about these microcultures? That's an interesting concept.
Microcultures are basically smaller, more localized cultures that develop within teams or departments inside a larger organization.
So, like, each team has its own unique vibe, its own way of working together and supporting each other, even within the broader company culture.
Exactly. And Gardner found that these microcultures can be super powerful, especially in a hybrid world, because they create a sense of belonging and support that can combat that feeling of isolation that can come with remote work.
Like having a smaller, more intimate community within a larger one. Okay, let's shift gears a bit and talk about another trend that's changing the traditional world of work, the rise of gig work and all these new ways of working.
The gig economy is booming, and Gartner's research points out both the good and the bad things that companies need to consider.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, right? You have the flexibility and autonomy that so many people are looking for, and for companies, it can save money and give them access to specialized skills. But there's also the risk of misclassifying workers, damaging your reputation, and even disrupting your company culture.
It's complicated, and companies have to be careful. They need to figure out how to leverage the benefits of gig work while avoiding the risks.
And that brings us to maybe the biggest unknown of all, AI.
Both Gardner and McKinsey have been digging into this, and there's so much hype, but also a lot of anxiety about it. Will it take our jobs? Will it make our lives easier or harder?
It feels like we're on the edge of something huge, and it's hard to predict what's going to happen.
McKinsey offers some good advice on how to prepare for this future where AI is everywhere.
Okay, give it to me. How do we navigate this uncharted territory?
Well, first, they say it's crucial to involve people from all across the company when implementing AI. It's not just a technology issue. It's about ethics. It's about making sure AI is being used in a way that aligns with the company's values and goals.
So having those tough conversations early on, thinking about the potential consequences, making sure everyone's voice is heard.
Exactly. And they also emphasize the importance of managing expectations. There's a lot of hype around AI, and it's easy to get carried away. But it's important to be realistic about what it can actually do, especially in the near term.
So no robot overlords taking over tomorrow then?
Not exactly. But you do have to be prepared for a future where AI is more and more a part of our work lives. McKinsey's encouraging companies to play around with AI, to experiment and figure out how it can work best for them. And importantly, to figure out how to measure whether those AI initiatives are actually delivering value.
So be curious, be willing to experiment, but also keep an eye on the results. Don't just chase the shiny new thing.
Right. Be strategic and think it through.
All right.
But as important as AI is, it's also important to remember it's just one piece of the puzzle.
Of course. You can't forget about the human side of things. All this technology is happening alongside a changing workforce, changing values, a whole new way of thinking about what work even is.
It's a lot to wrap your head around, but it's actually a pretty exciting time to be working.
I agree. So where do we go from here? How do we take all these insights and actually put them into practice? That's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive.
And we're back for the final part of our deep dive into the future of work. We've covered a ton of ground, looking at those big trends Gartner and McKinsey have identified. Human-centric work, the impact of AI, new leadership styles, the gig economy. It's a lot. But the one thing that really stands out to me is that the future of work isn't just happening to us. It's something we're all actively creating. It's about the choices we make, individually, as companies, and as a society.
Absolutely. It's not about just sitting back and waiting to see what happens. It's about taking charge of our careers, our skills, and shaping our own future.
But with so much changing, where do you even start? It can feel overwhelming.
Well, going back to those three key things we talked about earlier about what managers need to focus on, that's a good place to start. Equipping teams for resilience, investing in human-centric managers, and changing how performance is measured. That's the foundation for building a successful workplace in this new world of work. Okay, so that's a roadmap for leaders. But what about for individual employees? What can we do to get ready for what's coming?
I think one of the most important things is to develop a growth mindset. The future of work is all about being able to adapt, learn new things, and be okay with new challenges.
So it's not just about learning a specific skill, it's about learning how to learn.
Exactly. The skills that are hot today might be outdated tomorrow, so you have to be hungry for knowledge and ready to pivot.
You got to be comfortable with being a little uncomfortable, right? See those moments of uncertainty as chances to grow. So what are some practical things people can do to develop that growth mindset and stay ahead of the curve?
What make learning a constant thing? Take online courses, go to conferences, read books and articles, connect with people outside your usual circle. The more you expose yourself to new ideas and different ways of thinking, the more adaptable you'll be.
So be proactive, take control of your own development. Don't wait for your company to hand you everything. Go out and find it yourself.
And don't be afraid to experiment. Try new things, take on tough projects, step outside your comfort zone. That's where the real growth magic happens.
It's about looking at failure not as a setback, but as a chance to learn. Okay, we've talked a lot about the need for new skills, but which skills? What are those future-proof skills that'll be valuable no matter what?
Gartner and McKinsey both highlight a few key areas. Digital skills are becoming more and more crucial. And I'm not just talking about coding or super technical stuff. It's about being comfortable with technology, using it effectively, and thinking critically about all the information that's out there.
So being at ease in a world where technology is always changing and being able to quickly pick up new tools and platforms.
Another critical area is soft skills. These are the things that make us human that machines can't really replicate. Think about things like communication, collaboration, problem solving, critical thinking, creativity.
These are the things that allow us to connect, build relationships, navigate tricky situations, and come up with new and innovative solutions.
And of course, there's that ability to be agile and adaptable that we were just talking about. In a world that's changing so fast, being able to learn new things quickly, roll with the punches, and have that growth mindset is crucial.
It's about being okay with not knowing everything, being excited about change, and always looking for opportunities to learn and grow.
And remember, it's a journey, not a destination. The future of work isn't static. What's in demand today might be different tomorrow.
So it's not about mastering one set of skills and calling it a day. It's about being a lifelong learner and knowing how to adapt as the world around us changes.
And as you go through this, remember you're not alone. There are tons of resources out there, like online learning platforms, professional groups, mentoring programs. Reach out, connect with others who are on the same path.
Find your people, build your network, support each other as you figure out this whole future of work thing.
And to wrap things up, I want to leave you with this thought. The future of work might be uncertain, but that also means it's full of possibilities. It's a chance to rethink what work means to us, how we want to work, and what kind of impact we want to have on the world.
It's a chance to make work more human, more sustainable, more fulfilling for everyone. So as you go out there and shape your own future of work, remember to be curious, be adaptable, and stay connected.
And never stop learning.
Great advice. And that brings our deep dive into the future of work to a close. We hope you found it helpful, inspiring, and maybe even a little bit exciting. Thanks for joining us.